Hello and welcome back to the Just Follow Joy podcast. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Ariana and I'm a human design reader and teacher. And today I want to talk about something that is honestly very important in human design and for you if you want to truly live out and get the benefits of your design. It's actually pretty crucial. So it's key for living in alignment, living in more ease, manifesting more easily if that's something you're interested in, whatever it is you're looking to manifest, all of that stuff. And this is understanding and disentangling yourself from the not self. So this is something that's really powerful, but it is one of those parts of human design that is easy for people to get a little put off by because it can feel like we're talking all about the negative. And honestly, a lot of traditional human design is off-putting for people for this very reason. It's written or communicated in a way that focuses on and speaks to the not self, or i.e. what isn't us and what we need to let go of. So it can feel like it's focusing on fixing you, right? Like focusing on a problem instead of focusing on what's going right and what makes you awesome and unique and cool. But this is actually very important and it's really quite neutral. It's not a bad or good thing. And the reason why human design was actually originally formed and shared in this way was because the founder was basically saying, yo, that's exactly what he said. Yo, bro, yo, the real you don't need to cultivate that. It's not actually about becoming that. That's naturally you, and that would emerge, especially at the highest level, most aligned level for yourself in the world, if you just let that. Really, it's about getting rid of all the stuff that isn't you, the stuff that you have been conditioned to be or do, so that the real you has space to show up. Which is pretty cool, right? And basically what human design tells us is that when we can let go of this not self, we can let go of this conditioning to be something other than what we truly are, then that is how the gifts show up. And I'll tell you as well that when people come to human design and they're experiencing aspects of their design at a lower vibration or an unpleasant vibration, or they're feeling really stuck, why am I not showing up in this way that human design tells me I could? Why am I not being the person that that spirit knows I could be? Well, it's because we're getting stuck in the muck of our conditioning. We're getting stuck in the muck of our not self. So if we don't at least look at this a little bit and make an effort to let go of it, then we won't get to the good stuff, right? So I'm a positive person. And I like to focus on the positives, your gifts, your true purpose, living in a higher vibration. But if we don't let go of what's like dragging us down and pulling us away from that, then it's going to be so much harder to actually get there. And so all these things I tell you, it's not that they won't have a place to land, because oftentimes we are at least living some parts of our design correctly or in a way that we can see, but it's just not going to be as applicable. Like we're going to be moving through the mud. It's going to be so much harder. Or it's not going to show up for us at all. All these things that are our natural gifts, our natural abilities, this way that we're supposed to operate with ease, the things that are supposed to work with us or work for us, they're probably not going to in the way that we want them to if we don't at least look at this. So it's about acknowledging this so you can have all that good, cool stuff that we're talking about when we talk about the positives of your human design and your superpowers, etc. So that's my little disclaimer for today, all right? And with that said, let's get into it. So first off, what is the not self? It is literally what's not you. It's what isn't the true you. It's not actually how you are designed to naturally process energy and show up and live and thrive and succeed and fulfill your purpose. And on a more technical level here, the not self is energy that you pick up externally and are identifying with that is not yours. Because here's the thing. We are all living in a giant soup of energy. We are all swimming through this ocean of energy, which is made up of little particles, the most impactful and important being something called neutrinos. We're not going to talk about that today. Don't worry, you can understand without understanding neutrinos and what they are. But essentially, we are wading through this energy every day, all the time. We don't feel it, but we are. Or no, we do feel it. We're not always consciously aware of it, but we are. And this energy comes from everywhere and everything. So pretty much everything contributes to this ocean of energy that we're experiencing. But for the most part, the most important contributors to us as humans are the planets, stars, and other humans in this, energetic field of humanity that we live on Earth. Also Earth. So how it works is that we as people create some of that energy and are adding to that ocean. 99% of us are those kinds of people. Anybody who has at least 2 defined energy centers in their chart, which is 99% of the population, will do that. And then we also sense and or receive and feel in our bodies some of the energy from that ocean that other people make. So we're all in this. We all interact with it in different ways based on how we're designed. So wherever we are destined to create that energy, where we have defined energy centers, we really have a buffer to this external stuff. So it doesn't mean we aren't, aware of it or that we don't sense it when we're swimming through this energetic ocean, but we are much less likely to identify with it because it's pretty obvious it isn't us. We already make this for ourselves, so there's no place for this energy to come in. We have a buffer to it. And again, this is where we are defined in our charts. This is our defined energy centers. On the other hand, wherever we have what we call openness, so, for the most part here, we're referring to the undefined and completely open energy centers that we have. We will feel that energy as if it's our own. We attract it, we feel it in our bodies, and it's as if there isn't really this separation there. There isn't a boundary or so much of a boundary between us and that external energy from the energetic ocean. All of this, by the way, is a very neutral thing. It's not good or bad to have definition or lack definition somewhere, or have a buffer to external energy. It's not good or bad to be open to external energy. It's just a fact. It's just the structure of you, and it can be used either to your advantage or your disadvantage. And actually, even the not self is not a bad thing. It's just not what's you. It is truly a neutral thing. The way that we talk about the not self, sometimes it sounds like this big, scary thing, this monster that we're trying to outrun. But in reality, that's not the case. It's the fact that we identify with the not self that is the problem. So when we do not know these things about ourselves, when we don't realize that in some of these places, we create our own energy, and that is always us, and that's consistently where we experience our own energy, and other places are where we take on the energy from the outside world, this is where a problem can really arise. Because again, wherever we are open, we feel that external energy as if it's us. However, it's not us. It's just something that we are sensitized to. And if we don't realize that, then it's very easy to think that it is us. It is our energy, and it's something for us to deal with and handle and take action based on. So when we don't realize it's just passing through, then that is when it becomes an issue, because you try to act on or cling to something that was never meant to give you guidance or show you what's right for you or be important for you, like be something that you even really focus on for yourself. And then you spend all your time doing things that aren't correct for you, going the wrong way, using your energy to be something you aren't, stressing when you can't show up consistently with a certain kind of energy, and then thinking there's something wrong with you and you have to fix it in you. All of these things, and then you don't have space for the real you to really show up and come to be and know your true self and how you actually feel about things and what's right for you and is this the right path for you, whatever. Because you're so distracted with trying to master and show up as what you were never here to be to begin with, or at least what you were not meant to consistently show up as or with on a regular basis. You spend your time trying to be something that literally just does not even matter for you. So feeling the not self, feeling this energy that isn't you, that's not the issue. You're always going to do that through your undefined centers. Even the not self, again, is not the issue. The issue is when we identify with the not self and then the misalignment and the problems that seem to come with it. Because simply by identifying with the not self or this energy that isn't ours, then there can be problems that come along with it. But then we can compound those problems by thinking that the problems that come along with it are something that we also need to fix, when really it's like we just need to drop the whole thing. So this is what can pull us away from our gifts, from our highest expression, and gets us really stuck in the muck and feeling like we're experiencing the more negative aspects of our design. Or at the very least, we can't access these higher levels and higher vibrations and expressions of our design. And it all comes down to a very innocent misunderstanding of what is us and what actually isn't us. And if that's confusing, or you would like to see how this would play out in everyday life, let me give you an example. So let's say you have an undefined solar plexus center. The solar plexus rules emotional energy. So if you have this undefined, you don't create emotional energy for yourself or experience it consistently. Instead, you pick it up and experience it from other people who do create it. Not only that, but you amplify it. If you're wondering why, it's because our openness is also where we can help other people who create energy for themselves see that energy more clearly and use it better. So there's a point to this, right? But anyway, so you have basically this empathic sense around emotion, and you feel it in a very heightened way, even more than the person who is creating the emotional energy themselves. You might feel it like twice as much as they do. So what that means is that people like you are actually pretty calm and non-emotional naturally. I don't want to say unemotional per se, because we're baseline. It's that we don't really like feel high or low or out of the blue. We're rather nonplussed. And I think I've said this before in other places, but basically, without people like my sister or my best friend or my nieces, who are all people who create emotional energy, people like me, we wouldn't even know what emotional energy feels like. It's through those other people we get to experience it. But on our own, we don't create that, so we wouldn't know what that's like. But with all of this, we have the potential to be so wise around emotion, and we are meant to be, because we can feel into what's going on with someone else emotionally, like really deeply. We can feel it with them, and then we can pull out what needs to be seen. Because we can experience it, but we can stay separate from it and say, oh, I see what's going on. So we can honor it, be with it, without actually literally being in it. And then we can help other people be comfortable with their own emotions, with themselves, with their own emotional truths. And that's a beautiful thing. However, if you don't know that, if you don't realize that this is not your energy, and you think, oh, actually, this is me, you are not going to feel how I just described. You will either feel like a very emotional or overly reactive person because you think this is yours and it's your job to express it to get rid of it or deal with it, right? Figure it out. Or you'll become a people pleaser, trying to manage other people's emotional states so that you don't have to feel when they're unhappy. You just might not realize that's what's going on, right? You actually might think like, oh, when people don't like me, that makes me unhappy. But in reality, you're afraid of like feeling their emotional state if you quote unquote make them unhappy. Or you may feel so uncomfortable with what you're experiencing from someone else's emotions that you just go, nope, shutting down, not for me. I'm either going to run away from this and close myself off into a room and just be very introverted all the time. Or I'm going to shut this person down and tell them that they're being a problem because I'm not doing this. We are not doing this together right now. I can't handle that. I can't process that. Secretly, I think it's scary and confusing. So they need to just not feel it anymore. And they can look like people who just like don't understand emotion at all. They're not emotionally wise in any way, and they'd really rather have nothing to fucking do with it. And all of these are related to the not self question of the solar plexus center, which is, am I trying to avoid the truth? Or am I trying to avoid confrontation? Because each of these, or any expression of the not self through the solar plexus center that's undefined, all of these are basically trying to avoid feeling an emotion because they can't handle the truth of what it's like to feel it. Or they won't address the truth or be honest because they're afraid that another person will feel a certain way and then they're going to have to feel that emotion with them. One human design teacher says, we're going to have to eat their emotions. So then what happens? Well, first off, we start to identify with the issues of the not self there. So we identify as being a people pleaser, someone who can't handle emotion, someone who is so overly emotional all the time and so reactive, someone who is terrified of confrontation, somebody who is just like super non-emotional and can't even do it. And then a lot of our wounding also comes from these places too, because we feel like we're wrong here. We can't figure out the issue here. Like we have or are a problem. And then on top of that, we also take actions that align with being that kind of person. So, and that makes sense from a neuroscience perspective as well, right? You know, if you're saying, I'm so bad at confronting people, I'm such a people pleaser, I'm such a wimp, you're going to just reaffirm that to your subconscious. And then the not self also on top of this will have you use your defined parts. So the parts of you where you are you and you do create your own energy for yourself, and it will convince you to use that energy in a way that isn't right for you. So you show up with this sort of like skewed or distorted or just like dampened version of yourself. And this is how our defined centers can get conditioned as well. So there's this misunderstanding that we can't get conditioned around where we're defined or like what our true design is. That's not really true. It's just that we get into what's called the unhealthy state. So We don't get into the not self there because that's not really possible. This is your energy and it's always going to be you. It's not the not self, but it can be an unhealthy expression of the true you, like a lower vibration expression of it. So let's say that you have a defined G center, for example. You have your own identity, but in the unhealthy state, you won't show up as your true self. You'll suppress that, and that's really not good for you or the world. But let's say you also have an undefined solar plexus center. Maybe you're afraid of how somebody else will feel if you show up as your true self. If you just claim your identity and say, yeah, this is me and this is how I act and this is just natural for me, you could be afraid of what you're going to have to feel emotionally if somebody else responds to that and they don't like it. Or if you're just showing up as yourself and someone's not feeling good today because they're unemotional, and emotions, this is a conversation for a different time, but they don't like make any sense. They just come out of nowhere. And you can be like, oh, they have a problem with me because I'm being who I am. I should really suppress this and I should really pack this in. But no, we never ever want that for our defined centers. That's really just going to distort the energy there as well. And you don't deserve that, right? You deserve to show up as your big, beautiful self. Or if you're really short, your tiny, beautiful self. So basically, this means that the stuff that is you is also being used incorrectly, and then it doesn't really get to work as well. So this is what I was telling you about. It may not always be fun to look at the not self or what feels like it's sort of what's getting in the way, or the obstacles, or the darkness or shadow. But when we do that, we do transmute it and we make room for the parts of us that we are supposed to show up with on a regular basis, to show up as their highest versions, right? You can see how this works because, if on the other hand, somebody with an undefined solar plexus center was like, no, I'm not going to take on someone else's energy, emotional energy, how they feel about me or how they feel about today, make it about me, and then suppress my own identity because of that. That's living in alignment. That's how they're going to get the best out of showing up as their true, authentic self. Is by actually doing it, right? And not letting themselves get pulled away from that because they're identifying with the energy in their undefined solar plexus center, which was not them to begin with and wasn't their stuff to deal with. Because the kicker is that none of this, from the energy that you originally felt through your openness to any of the issues that come with it, is actually you. So when you show up, and let's stick with this undefined solar plexus example, when you show up overly emotional and reactive, that's literally not you doing that. When you run away from conflict, that's not you. That's not what you're really like. And when I say this, I know somebody is going to mention something like this. Like, what? So just people just aren't accountable for their actions? No, you are 110% accountable for your actions and responsible for them. So I'm not saying that you should go around blaming everything you do on your not self, like it's your evil twin or something. This isn't a get out of jail free card. What I'm saying is that the true you is not the problem, and the true you isn't the one doing this. You're really just acting as a funnel or a channel or a platform for the not self to show up through you. And then we think we have to fix it or fixate on it to solve the problem when that's just not true. What we have to do is start dissociating from it. And again, the not self isn't evil. How could it be? I mean, honestly, that's like saying that energy over there of that person isn't my energy, so that person's evil. Or like this, we can even pick up animals from pets too. So it's not like when you're picking up energy from like your dog or something, you're like, you're an evil little asshole. No, that's not true, right? It's not us. We just don't want to be trying to act through this stuff because that's when the expression of our true selves, our soul design, that's when it can't show up cleanly and authentically with this stuff. Getting caught up in the not self, this is why we convince ourselves that we don't really know what our intuition is saying to us. We don't really know what we want. We don't really know what feels right. When we do underneath this stuff, but it's sort of like all of this is covered up with a bunch of shit that's irrelevant and unnecessary. I think those are actually the best words when it comes to the not self. I think that's really helpful because it doesn't have to be a scary thing. It's just kind of like, where do I have a bunch of this extra stuff on here that really doesn't need to be here? Because honestly, I may have picked this up from yesterday, from a month ago, from years ago, but it's not mine and I don't have to deal with it. The way that I kind of see it too is like you are this light bulb and you can shine so bright, but if you have like a bunch of dirt and muck or dust on the glass, then you're not going to be able to shine as brightly, and then the light will look dim, or it will like the light will look funky or something like that. And so it's not that there's really anything wrong with the light at this point. Let's say that this light is still working. Let's say this is a light that shines bright for many, many years, for like 100 years. And that's a guarantee. So it's not the light's problem. It's all the gunk on the glass. That's kind of how I look at this. You just like clean the glass off, right? If you're going to like unscrew the light bulb for a second, clean the glass off and put it back in, you're golden. And by the way, too, if you know that the not self isn't your energy, then you're golden too. In the example that I gave, with emotional energy, it may not always be comfortable to feel that energy from someone else, especially if they're in a bad mood, but you also know that it's not yours, it's theirs. So you can just kind of let it go through you. You don't take it so personally, and you really don't have to worry about it. Unless you're afraid this person's going to like throw something at a wall. And then in that case, that's kind of on them. So you don't have to do anything to deal with this energy. It's not your stuff. It's really for them to deal with it. And also, when you cannot take responsibility for somebody else's energy because you know it's not your stuff, you don't have to show up in that way all the time, that encourages them and helps them to own it and show up with the best version of that too. And then everyone can show up as their glorious, true, aligned selves and do what's right for them because we're each using what we've got correctly. So here's what to do about this. If you want me to give you some homework, this is your homework. If you want something to look into, here's a little how-to. Again, 5-1 profile. Love to give you some practical tips, some actionable steps. So the first thing to know is that your strategy and authority, it may not sound sexy, but it's always going to guide you to a place that's correct for you. That is the number one way to decondition. So if that lands for you and that's all you need to know and that's all you want to do, good for you. That's enough, honestly. However, what I also recommend if you're game is when it comes to your openness, your undefined centers, when you get into your not self theme or things aren't really working out the way that you would hope, or you just feel off or out of alignment, whatever, or you just want to do this as a little check-in, what I want you to do is ask yourself the question of your undefined center or centers. And I'm going to put the list or a link to the list down below. So it's just one question per energy center. So for example, the question of the undefined solar plexus center is, am I avoiding the truth? Another way of saying that is, am I avoiding confrontation? And so if you say yes to that question, I want you to go, oh, that's not me. That's something I don't even have to pick up anymore. Okay. And I just want you to practice this. You don't necessarily have to do anything about it right now because again, the issue is not that you have to fix yourself here or solve a problem. It's really just about letting the stuff go and not identifying with it in the first place. So it's about learning not to pick it up in the first place, or at least learning to drop it sooner. That's really it. So if you can just become aware, I can't tell you how powerful that already is. The undefined centers, they are sometimes where we need to do a little bit of self-development, a little bit of work to let that stuff go. And if that's the case, that's totally fine. But I'll tell you that just noticing it and being kind and compassionate towards yourself when you are doing that, because honestly, you've probably had a whole lifetime of conditioning pushing you in the wrong direction with this, a whole lifetime of living in a way that's maybe not in alignment there. A lot of the time, all we have to do is just be like, oh, that's not for me, dropping it, moving it on. And it is a practice, especially at the beginning. It gets easier as you connect with your design over time and you realize what it feels like to be the true you and how good that feels. It becomes easier and it becomes more of the norm not to identify with the energy of your undefined centers. But I'll tell you too that it's a lifelong practice and it's a journey. So don't get down on yourself if you still kind of get caught up in the conditioning there, or the not self and your undefined centers, or your not self overall, because that's how it works for all of us. Like, girl, I get caught up in my undefined heart center and mind center all the time. And I'm working on letting that stuff go still. So I'm doing way better than years and years ago when I learned human design, like leagues better. And it's so much easier for me to do it. But it doesn't mean that I don't still get caught up in it sometimes. So just give yourself a break around it. But all of this, if you haven't realized yet, this is why it's so helpful to know your energy centers, defined or undefined, in addition to your energy type and authority. So if you want to learn about each of your 9 energy centers in depth, how to use them, even what gifts you have in them naturally, definitely check out the 9 energy centers course in the course library. We cover all this stuff We also talk about how your centers function in relationship with other people's centers. I loved recording that section. It's a really good one, so I highly recommend it. And if you are brand new to human design, the first place that you're going to want to start, the energy centers are great, but definitely start with learning about your aura type, also known as your energy type, and your authority. So we have courses, videos on that in the library as well. If you're interested in learning about it, go ahead. And I will have links to all of that stuff below so you can get started whenever you're ready. But anyway, that's it from me today. I hope this helped. You rock, and I will talk to you next time.